Hello, everybody. This is Praveen Joseph. Thank you so much for joining. I think we have almost a full house now, and we're going to get started. First of all, let me thank you once. Thank you for joining us. The context for today's webinar is going to be cybersecurity trends and key events that colored the whole of the cybersecurity landscape in 2018. And from here, we're going to look at what expectations we can have, what kind of threats we need to prepare ourselves for in the coming year, which is 2019. Okay, when I look at the crowd, the audience who's joined us today, I see a pretty diverse a portfolio of people who are with us today. We have risk managers, we have cybersecurity partners from Ingram Micro. We have those who are specialized in, say, selling cybersecurity solutions. So let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm part of the Ingram Micro cybersecurity team, working as a cybersecurity consultant as well as a trainer. It gives me a lot of pleasure today to be here with you and be given an opportunity to speak with you as we're going to explore the landscape, the overall landscape for cybersecurity in the last 12 months, and try to identify what are the areas that we need to best prepare for in the year that is coming ahead. Excellent. Just to remind you, if you have any questions or any comments at any point, feel free. You can just use the chat window. We will be collecting all the questions, all your comments, and we will be addressing them towards the end. All right. The webinar is being recorded. The recording will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel, Ingram Micro Cybersecurity. So in case your friends or colleagues were not able to join us today, feel free to circulate the link with them as well, because you will be receiving this link at the end of the session. Feel free to circulate it to them as well. Thank you so much. All right, with this fundamental introduction, it gives me a lot of pleasure to jump into the concepts of today's webinar. What you see here is the primary agenda that we have laid out for today's session. It's going to be 60 minutes of talking, but primarily not talking. It's going to be just about 40 to 45 minutes of going over the slides. And the remaining time that we have would be used to address your questions or comments or any of your feedback that you feel needs to be highlighted as part of the session. All right, so we will start with a quick look at the 2018 cybersecurity landscape itself. Identify what are the major cyber attacks or the breaches that literally shook the world, shook the major corporations of the world, and literally gave a massive wake-up call to cybersecurity managers in terms of how well they were protecting their organizations. Of course, there were opportunities as well as challenges that had to be looked into by cybersecurity firms such as ourselves. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into these areas as well. We're going to also look in section 2 at the cybersecurity traditional cyber threats such as phishing, malware, etc., how they fared over the year of 2018, what changes they underwent, and then we will identify the emerging areas of cybersecurity. The new trends of cyber attacks, and from here, what we need to identify, what takeaway points we need to identify, so that we are best prepared for the year ahead in terms of securing our organization, securing our data, as well as securing the lives of our own people. All right. So with this fundamental overview, let's start with the look at the 2018 cybersecurity landscape. Now, many of us here, you would agree with me that not even 1 week would pass by when you looked at your LinkedIn feeds or your Facebook feeds, or even just looked at the news casually on your phones, and you noted that there was at least one report of a cybersecurity attack against one organization or the other. All right, every single week there was at least one organization reporting that yes, I had been breached, I had suffered a cybersecurity attack. All right, and the interesting thing is, not every single attack gets reported. We know about this. It's only those which are reported that we are seeing, and it's a small snapshot of these attacks that we put up here on the slide. On the top half of the screen, you see two of the major cyber attacks that hit the Middle East region. So Kareem, the taxi hailing app or the ride hailing app that everyone is familiar with across the Middle East, Dubai-based company, they suffered a very, very significant cyber incident, a cyber attack, and their customers, credit card numbers, trip information, phone numbers, email addresses, etc., was breached. On the other side of the border in Saudi Arabia, a petrochemical company was facing a different kind of cyber attack. All right, now this was an attack that was not targeting, the theft of secure information, of trade secrets or copyrighted information belonging to this company, Rather, it was designed with the intent of triggering a bomb. All right. So this is a new kind of cyber attack itself that we saw happening in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. The details of the organization that was impacted, the details of the alleged perpetrators of this crime, these are yet to be revealed. However, it is a little appalling to see that cybersecurity is taking on onto the physical realms of our world itself, because we're using an application that can trigger an electronic bomb within a firm, and we're trying to trigger off this application using a malicious mechanisms by exploiting vulnerabilities within the network of the organization itself. All right, so this particular attack was really an eye opener and a shocker to many organizations, because you're talking about human lives that could have been compromised, that could have been lost in this attack. Looking at the global scale, in September 2018, British Airways reported a significantly major cybersecurity attack. 380,000 of their passengers, every time they tried to book, flight tickets within a specific time window between two specific dates in the month of August, their credit card information was siphoned off by cyber attackers, because they had installed malware onto the web pages, the payment pages of the British Airways websites. All right, so if any of us had the misfortune of using the British Airways website between those two specific dates, it is very likely that our credit card data, our debit card data was actually impacted, was actually stolen by the attackers in this particular compromise. Of course, British Airways did take steps to notify all of their impacted customers, but then, of course, they had to suffer a lot of legal penalties. GDPR notwithstanding, the penalties are yet to be made public in terms of what BA will have to pay. But of course, their reputation was significantly hit, because it was just about a year or two back when their baggage handling systems were also impacted and people could not track their bags anymore. There was a cyber attack targeting the baggage handling systems of British Airways just about last year, I believe. All right. On the privacy landscape, on the privacy scene, things were not so different as well. Facebook, I'm sure you would have heard about this. The Cambridge Analytica scandal was the biggest privacy scandal to rock the world of cybersecurity, right? Just because GDPR happened to come out in this same year, 25th of May 2018, and Cambridge Analytica came to light around the same time, Facebook was significantly penalized. The senior management of Facebook, they were made to sit in front of parliaments in UK and Singapore, all over the world. They were called to task, they were called to action and understand what exactly went wrong. In case you were wondering, Cambridge Analytica is an organization that was helpful in architecting the presidential election campaign of President Donald Trump. There was an app which was developed by a seemingly unknown person called Mr. Alexander Coogan, which was supposed to be a personality test, and it invited users on Facebook to just click on the app and you'll know a little bit about your personality at the end of the test. What the users didn't know was that this particular app was using their responses to create profiles about their individual personalities, plus also pick out information about their profiles, public information at least, and pull out public information about those on their friends' network as well. All of this information was sold by the developer of this app to Cambridge Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica was an organization, like I said, which was influential in architecting the presidential campaign itself in the US elections, presidential elections. All right. So Facebook, as the platform, as a provider of the platform on which this app was installed, on which users were accessing this app, they could not wash their hands off. They could not say that, hey, I'm not liable for this. I'm not accountable for this. I'm not aware of what apps are being installed on my platform. They had to have a certain level of accountability, a certain level of liability that they had to take ownership of and say that, yes, I am responsible for the data that my users have entrusted me with. This is the long arm of GDPR which is speaking. This is the arm of GDPR saying companies like Facebook or Google or Dropboxes of the world, they cannot say, no, I'm not responsible for the data or the security of the data. I'm not responsible for controlling the privacy of my end users. Rather, I am also liable equally. So to set an example, apparently, is why a £500,000 fine was actually imposed upon Facebook. On a side note, £500,000 is revenue that Facebook generates within a matter of about 10 minutes. So for them, it's not a really big amount. But looking at the overall privacy scene, this is one of the biggest fines that has ever been imposed on an organization for a privacy violation. So it speaks volumes in terms of what is to come. Next year, we can expect more significant fines. In fact, we know for a fact that Google is already being pulled up under apparent GDPR violations, and it's just a matter of time before we see what kind of fines they will be sanctioned upon. How have organizations been performing in terms of defending themselves in 2018? Like you can see over here, we've classified the entire landscape into three predominant areas. What are the pain points that cyber defense organizations have faced? As a cybersecurity risk manager, what are the pain points that your end customers have faced? For instance, if I'm a construction company, or if I'm a bank or a hospital or a school, whatever the case is, my objective as a security manager is to protect the data of my people, the people within my organization. What are the pain points I faced? How well did I perform against those particular pain points? And where did my senior management, my C-level staff, where did they invest in 2018? When we look at this, this picture, it is pretty telling. It tells a very clear story, and that's what I'm going to try and explain over here. The most important priority for organizations has been, at least within this region, within the Middle East region, the most important priority has been detecting the fact that they have been breached. So suppose I've been hit. How quickly do I know that I've been hit? Globally, the average incident detection time, it fell down from 80 days in 2016 to just about 57 days in 2017. If you let me to just annotate, I'll highlight this over here with my pen. Right here. So from 80 days in 2016 to 57 days in 2017, and this number is expected to further fall in the year of 2018. We will know this by the time 2018 is ended. So there has been certain improvements globally in terms of how quickly incidents are being detected. And this is a very positive sign. We can also see that on security operation centers, on security incident and event management solutions, SIM solutions, organizations spent about $17 million globally speaking. So this speaks volumes about the fact that organizations, the senior level management of at least large organizations, they are recognizing the need for early detection of incidents, because without this, you cannot even mobilize your incident response plans. So quick detection, and this can only be done once you have a 24/7 SOC system in place, or you have a very good SIM solution supporting the SOC in place. So investments have been coming in towards these areas, and this is a very positive sign for the whole cybersecurity industry. On the compliance scene, GDPR was the biggest word on everybody's lips. Understanding GDPR itself was a big challenge that organizations had to go through. So the biggest pain point that we had in GDPR was in the year 2018, understanding it. Just because I'm not located in Europe, many people assume that, hey, GDPR does not apply to me because it only applies to those who are in Europe, which, if you're aware, it's a very massive fallacy. It's a very big mistake to make. Even if I'm located outside of Europe, if I'm dealing with a European Union entity, or if I'm transferring, processing data that belongs to an individual who is located in Europe, GDPR will apply to me. And just to set the record straight, GDPR has nothing to do with your nationality or your citizenship. It covers every single person who is legally and physically located within Europe. All right. So even if I'm located outside of Europe, if I'm processing data that belongs to these people who are located in Europe, I would have to comply with GDPR. Just understanding this, just navigating the GDPR applicability area, that itself was a big challenge for organizations outside of Europe. But yes, the US, UK, as well as the EU regions, they have been pretty fast in adopting GDPR. 74% of them are expecting to be compliant by this year. But worldwide, looking at the global scene, adoption of GDPR is still yet to pick up. Organizations are still trying to understand whether it applies, and if it does, which areas of my business should be covered under GDPR? How can I minimize the cost? So these are the areas where challenges were faced, and organizations are still trying to come to terms with what GDPR really is and how it impacts them. Globally, around $200,000 was the average amount that organizations spent on GDPR. In terms of emerging areas like the Internet of Things, as well as the more or less mature area, which is the cloud, the challenge that cybersecurity teams, the cybersecurity managers faced was reducing the attack surface. You know this very well. When you're developing a cybersecurity program or a project, your objective is to minimize the scope of this project. Simple example, PCI DSS. If an organization needs to be certified against PCI DSS, their objective is to minimize the area where card holder numbers, your credit or debit card numbers. I want to minimize the systems, the servers, the firewalls that store, process, or transmit card holder numbers. Talk about the cloud, talk about the Internet of Things. Achieving this is going to be a nightmare for a cybersecurity manager. So this was one of the biggest challenges that we faced in securing data this year. Of course, we cannot do without these new technologies, the IoT or the cloud, as well as artificial intelligence. The challenges that they bring out to us is we cannot control our data, either because it is with a third-party service provider or because it's just spread all over the IoT ecosystem. We don't really know what is where. Just developing my data inventory itself is a challenge. It's going to take months, even for a small environment. All right. So for these reasons, about 20% of organizations experienced at least one IoT attack within the last 3 years. And another seemingly new attack method that we're seeing is attackers or cyber attackers are using legitimate and trusted cloud services like Google Docs, like Dropbox or your OneDrive, for instance. Organizations have started trusting them to a good extent now. So attackers are transmitting their malicious traffic using these legitimate services like Google Docs. So for an IDS system or for a firewall, it recognizes this traffic as Google Docs traffic, and it trusts it because the organization has already started to trust Google Docs as part of its trusted computing environment. So attackers have increasingly started using your legitimate cloud services, like what you see from Google or Dropbox, so to speak, to set up their own malware command and control centers. Because in a ransomware incident, my objective would be to set up a command and control center through which I can exchange the keys, the decryption keys of your files, assuming I'm a cyber attacker. And it is very difficult for me to evade detection of this traffic, wherein the keys have to be exchanged from the victim's computer over to the cyber attacker's computer. If I'm able to use a legitimate service, a cloud-based service like Google Docs or Dropbox to transfer or to transmit this data, that is where I'm actually innovating my overall attack vector. That is where cloud is helping me in carrying out my cyber attack. How are organizations dealing with this? Compliance is one of the key areas that is addressing this particular challenge, especially with IoT. New cybersecurity laws, like for instance, SAMA in Saudi Arabia, which applies to all banks or all insurance organizations in Saudi Arabia. There are very, very high level requirements that organizations have increasingly started adopting and seeing how they apply to their own areas, to their own ecosystems. So compliance is one of the areas through which we are trying to tackle these challenges brought out by these new areas. That being said, IoT specific security standards or cloud specific security standards, these are yet to see massive adoption, especially within the region, which is the Middle East. The next challenge that we had was people. The next challenge that cybersecurity managers had was getting the right qualified people. Like you see over here, CISSP, one of the most reputed security certifications that you see in the field of cybersecurity or information security. We are seeing about 50,000 openings for CISSP qualified people. Even if people have the qualification, the other challenge is they don't have the relevant experience, they don't have the communication skills, they don't have the business knowledge. So getting the right talent, getting the right people with the qualifications as well as the expertise, this was a bigger challenge that organizations were facing. On the brighter side, yes, investment areas or budget has been increasing for certification of their qualified employees. Organizations have started nominating their own staff, people who've been within the team for about 5 years, 10 years, so on and so forth, and sending them out for CISSP certification trainings, sending them out for boot camps, so that their own staff get motivated to get certified and can be better equipped to protect the organization. Also, an important statistic is 1 million cybersecurity jobs. We're seeing them globally. Let me also add to this the importance of the data protection officer's position in GDPR on the privacy scene. As of today, if you look at the European market, there's about 90 to 100,000 DPO vacancies which were created just within the last 8 to 10 months. Okay, this is coming directly from GDPR because GDPR says that if you are involved in large-scale processing of personal data, you would have to hire a DPO. All right, so a DPO position is someone who's got the right privacy expertise as well as the privacy certifications, and this DPO person would be reporting directly to the CEO with a lot of independence. So it's a very, very sought-after job. A lot of privacy professionals are seeking to switch over to this particular position, and we are seeing at least 100,000 vacancies. Still, organizations are struggling to meet this, struggling to hire and retain the right candidates. So what we are seeing is other consulting companies are pooling out DPO candidates. A small consulting company hires and keeps these DPO candidates and then contracts them out to their customers as, a DPO contractor. This is also allowed within GDPR, and organizations are seeing this as a quicker option, a more flexible option for meeting the need. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. We need to look at the trends. The trends that cybersecurity has been seeing between 2018 as well as the past few years. For instance, 2014. So what you see on this graph on the left is that organizations are facing more cyber attacks. The number of organizations that are facing an attack between 2014 and 2018, it has increased significantly. Whereas on the other hand, the optimism of evading a cyber attack in the next year, it is coming down, like you see. So what this means is more and more organizations are accepting the fact that, yes, I'm going to be hit. More and more organizations are preparing themselves for this, hopefully. And more organizations are facing targeted attacks as well. Within the last 4 years, this trend has been very, very evident. And this is coming from a GigaOM 2018 cybersecurity report. The biggest roadblocks that organizations are facing, like I said in the previous slide, it is a lack of skilled people. I'm not able to find the right person with the right skills, the certifications, as well as the experience. This is the biggest challenge that cybersecurity managers tell us. Earlier, it used to be security awareness, but like I'll tell you in the upcoming slides, organizations are finding out new and innovative methods to actually tackle this problem. I'll tell this to you how this works in just the coming slides. Change in next year's IT security budget. Earlier, there was absolutely no change, which means senior management was not willing to put in more dollars. But there has been a small increase in 2018. Organizations are saying that, yes, there is a 5 to 9% increase in our budget for 2019 for security. Biggest cybersecurity threats happen to be and still continue to be malware as well as spear phishing. Okay, simply because of the scale of reach, it's very, very easy for malware or spear phishing attacks to reach their targets. We'll see how these particular attacks have actually been prevailing within 2018. Guys, let me remind you once again, if there's any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to chat in. Feel free to type them in at any point in time. We're more than happy to receive them, and we will revisit them at the end as well. All right, coming over to the second part. In 2018, how did traditional cybersecurity threats perform? What do I mean by traditional? We know for a fact that ransomware was one of the biggest keywords in the year 2018. We started off 2017 with WannaCry, and then there was Petya and NotPetya. So WannaCry itself, it gave a lot of impetus to the same cybersecurity messages that we as cybersecurity professionals have been professing. It made it easier for us to convince management that, yes, you need to wake up to cybersecurity. This is a real attack, a real thing, a real threat, and you need to start pouring in your budgets. In 2018, unfortunately or fortunately, ransomware market saw a small, correction effort, because we started seeing that not everyone is paying ransoms. Cyber criminals, right? Cyber criminals started seeing that not everyone is honoring the requests. Most organizations had backups, and they were not willing to pay, the significantly exorbitant sums of money that they were being charged. So the market saw the need for a small correction of their demands. They made a small, correction of the ransomware amount that was being charged. And the average figure that was being charged was about $250 or $220 to $250 for every ransomware attack, globally speaking. So this was not much, but earlier, if you looked at it, it used to be in terms of thousands of dollars. So right now, more organizations, more cyber attack organizations or cyber criminal organizations, they are targeting smaller organizations, SMB businesses which have little to zero knowledge of ransomware and absolutely no cyber protection at all. They're looking at the quick wins, the low-lying fruit, and charging them smaller figures like $250. So if you look at it, ransomware is essentially a commodity. It's been commoditized in a very, very grand way. Who are being targeted? Government sector, energy, oil and gas, large and established organizations, as well as the small and medium-sized organizations who are involved in manufacturing, or the smaller IT organizations as well. What are the key conditions that an attacker would require? Of course, we know this. For a ransomware attack, or for a piece of ransomware malware to penetrate the network, phishing is one of the biggest carriers. So any inadvertent or careless actions by the employees, they clicked on phishing mails or visited a compromised website. This was the biggest area for me to penetrate into an organization and actually launch a ransomware attack. Also, the absence of backups. This was the biggest enabler of a ransomware attacker, a cyber criminal who's launching a ransomware attack. If they have no backups, he knows that the ball is in his court, and he can actually demand whatever amount he wants to get the data, to give the data back to the victim. On the other end, we have malware as well. And like I said, malware was one of the biggest cyber attack agents that organizations were witnessing from 2014 even up to 2018. The new trend that we saw was something called fileless attack techniques, like you see over here. A fileless attack or fileless malware is very different from your traditional malware. So in your traditional malware, you will need your user to, knowingly or unknowingly install a piece of software on the machine, right? And this is the application which would carry out the malicious activity that was intended by the attacker itself. In a fileless attack technique, the attacker is able to exploit built-in commands of Windows without requiring any applications at all. All right, so he's able to compromise something like the PowerShell or the Windows management interface, which are built-in tools within any Windows desktop, and that can be used for running any privileged commands, not only on the desktop, but also on other systems that are talking to the desktop itself. So this is a new strain of malware that we saw emerging in 2018. All sectors of industry were targeted, of course, not just government or semi-government or private. Every sector was targeted in malware attacks. And of course, poorly configured antivirus solutions or not having no updated signatures were the key reasons these attacks were successful. That being said, let me highlight that fileless attacks, they have little to do with updated antivirus solutions. The solution for a fileless malware attack is still yet to be established or published firmly. Because you have an antivirus signature updated, it is not going to protect an organization against fileless malware attacks. All right. Phishing was, of course, one of the biggest forms of cyber threats that organizations faced in this year. What we noticed was phishing attacks, they, just give me 1 second, please. They shifted focus from targeting individuals to targeting entire organizations itself, using an individual to penetrate into a larger organization. This was the core focus of phishing attacks. And phishing, like you already know, was the biggest carrier of a ransomware attack as well, of ransomware attacks across the world. Now, many phishing websites, another interesting development was they have started the mock websites, right? The website that looks like it's the same login page of your bank or the same login page of your office email. These websites have improved their overall security capabilities, so-called security capabilities. So they're using HTTPS. Earlier, they all used to be HTTP. Just by looking at that, you could tell that this is a mock website. It is not a genuine website from my bank. To overcome that, the attackers or the criminals have started investing in genuine HTTPS encryption of traffic. So your credentials, when they go to these, these mock websites, are encrypted. But of course, that is only to trick victims, hapless victims. Who is being targeted? Email online service companies, those which provide email services to customers, like to their own customers, or even financial organizations like banks, third-party processors of your credit or debit card information. These organizations were the top 2 targets for phishing, for the phishers, in fact. Others include, of course, government, e-commerce, and so on. And the key conditions for a successful attack was, again, careless employee actions, nothing else. All right. Now, we've looked at how 2018 was colored in terms of the cybersecurity landscape. We looked at how cybersecurity managers had a lot of pain points. GDPR was one of them. Acquiring top qualified CISSP or so on, DPOs, personnel was a big challenge. What are the key areas that we're seeing emerging for 2019? Now, these are areas that we need to analyze from 2 perspectives. 2019, emergent areas in cyber crime, emergent areas in cyber defense. All right. So let's try to understand them quickly, and we'll finish this in about 10 minutes when we look at time. One of the new areas that emerged in the area of cybercrime was cryptocurrency hijacking. Now, when I told you earlier that ransomware subsided significantly in 2018 compared to 2017, the reason is a new form of cyber attack emerged, which was cryptocurrency hijacking. We're all familiar with blockchain and how it is taking over organizations across the globe. Everybody wants to do something on the blockchain, even if they don't know how much value it's going to give them. Just because it was a massive buzzword, it still is, in fact. Everybody wanted to be involved with it. Now, one of the challenges in blockchain is I need to have sufficient computing power, and this is not sufficient, it is massive. In fact, I need to have massive amounts of computing power if I need to be a successful miner of Bitcoins on a blockchain. So it wasn't long before attackers thought that, hey, I don't need to use only my own computing power. I can trick somebody else into giving me their own RAM, their own CPU, their own processing capabilities without even them being aware of this. This is what I do in a cryptocurrency hijacking or a cryptojacking attack. A hacker tricks a victim into providing his or her computing resources so that they can use it illegally for mining cryptocurrencies. Now, the number of cryptojacking cases had risen by 400% only in the year 2018. This was something that no one had even heard of in 2017, and today it is one of the most important forms of cyber attack. So this is something that organizations have to prepare for. If you are involved in mining of any sort, or even if you're involved in the blockchain, you should be aware of what cryptojacking is and make sure that your organizations, your infrastructure does not become a victim of this. Another form of cyber attack that we saw coming out was software subversion. What do I mean by software subversion? Now, you must be familiar with the concept of a backdoor. Suppose I am a cyber attacker who's taken control of a system. Once I've gained entry into the system, I need to have another mechanism for me to have continued access to the system itself. Continued access such that tomorrow when I come into the system, I will still be able to log in. I will still be able to access the same server that I compromised, for instance. This is where I set up a backdoor. A backdoor is something which only I know exists. It is the actual owner of the system does not know this exists. It allows me access to the assets that particular system is protecting. In software subversion, what I try to do is I try to set up this particular backdoor using an application or even a hardware component within my target system. It is a very, very new form of attack, and we are seeing increasing number of cases. We are expecting that this will be a significant form of threat in 2019. Using dedicated applications just for developing my backups, using dedicated hardware components itself, just so that I have a backdoor. All right. Another emerging threat that we've been seeing globally is that of the rise of information warfare. And I'm sure you would agree with me. In fact, WannaCry, the attack that I just mentioned, it has been attributed to one of the rogue nation states in the world very recently. The United States of America had actually alleged that one of the rogue nation states of the world was the country that was behind WannaCry. Of course, there are other players as well. What is interesting about this whole development is that we are seeing governments are acquiring qualified, extremely talented cybersecurity professionals for launching cyber attacks against their own, state enemies, so to speak. So this means these attacks are extremely well funded. They are extremely targeted, and since they have very, very sophisticated or qualified people carrying them out, they are extremely high level. They are extremely sophisticated, for lack of a better word. How do organizations protect against this? When you look at WannaCry, we saw the largest shipping company in the world, Maersk, was actually impacted. Maersk probably had little or nothing to do with the alleged motive behind the attack. The motive of the attack was to prove to the world that, yes, we have the capabilities to launch such an attack. And you can see how strong we are. Organizations will become unwillingly involved in these kinds of attacks. They'll become unwilling victims of these attacks. Now we are seeing organizations are actually taking steps to protect themselves against this. One of them is the use of gamified security awareness frameworks, especially by government and semi-government organizations in the Gulf region, which is UAE, KSA, and Egypt. What do I mean by this? How is it actually relevant to this? Let me tell you in a quick 2 minutes. We've recognized that people are the biggest form of vulnerability within an organization. Right? So when I said phishing or ransomware, we know that these penetrate because of one weak link in the organization, which is the people. And we are finding it challenging. Organizations are finding it challenging, especially the last few years, to make sure that their employees recognize that security is a priority, it's a critical requirement, and that they have a part to play in maintaining it. However, it is difficult to keep on reiterating the same message over and over and over again. Unfortunately, it's a requirement. But it is difficult because people get bored, to put it in a very short word, right? So what organizations are doing, especially in the Gulf region, we are seeing this happening. They're looking for new and innovative methods to eliminate that boredom and to make security awareness interesting. So the whole message is registered within their employees' minds, and they're able to change the culture gradually towards a more security-centric culture. For this, what they're looking at is gamified security awareness frameworks. We're talking about virtual reality games, phishing simulations, or even online platforms where people can undergo video-based trainings, and then they play a game at the end of the game, at the end of the training, just to see how well they've actually understood the concepts. This is where organizations are shifting from your traditional, classroom-based trainings, or your traditional e-learnings or LMS, which require that the employees take a test at the end of the training, a multiple choice questionnaire, and they need to finish it. This is not working so much for the more advanced organizations. So they're looking at gamified solutions and looking to strengthen their biggest asset, which is nothing but their people, and eliminating the fact that they are the weakest link in the organization. All right. Emergent areas in cyber defense. Like I said, we need to look at cybercrime as well as cyber defense. One of the new areas that we've seen emerging is that of zero trust environments. What do I mean by zero trust environments? Like I just mentioned, people are considered to be the biggest weakness within an organization. In fact, all of these areas, the 1, 2, and 3 bullet points that you see here, they are based on strengthening the people aspect of your information security ecosystem within an organization, strengthening the security at the employee level of an organization. The first one is what we call zero trust environment. In a zero trust environment, I'm eliminating the trust that I have for my employees itself. If you look at it, insider threats, social engineering, identity theft, all of these are based on the fact that an attacker is able to impersonate an employee. Suppose I don't trust that employee. Suppose I add multiple layers of authentication, 2 or 3 factors, so on and so forth. It means I don't trust him, although he is my own employee. This will make it difficult for an attacker to carry out their exploits within an organization, right? So in a zero trust environment, that whole element of trust is completely eliminated. In fact, Google had deployed a new zero trust platform for its employees just this year. It was called Beyond Trust. And they claimed that they face absolutely no password-based attacks or no theft of user credentials once they set up this zero trust environment. So in 2019, we expect that organizations will start recognizing the benefit that zero trust brings about and start actually implementing solutions to achieve this. Another area is user and entity behavior analytics, UBA. You might have heard about this. All right, a UEBA or a UBA rather is an AI-based platform which over a course of time, it learns about the behavior of employees within the organization. So I know for a fact that employee 123, he comes into the organization usually between 9 and 9:30 in the morning. He logs on to this particular system first thing in the morning. He checks his email. So his behavior is learned by the AI algorithm over a period of time. The moment it notices that there is a small deviation from this behavior, like a login in the middle of the night on the weekend, it will try to assign a probability to the fact that this could be a potential attack. All right. So based on this, it identifies indicators of compromise. It sends a notification into the SOC, and thereby tries and prevents these attacks from materializing. So it's a system which learns about employees' behaviors and points out anomalous activities as potential indicators of compromise. Now we've seen that investments in UEBA solutions are expected to grow to $350 million in 2020. 2018, there was very, very strong traction in this area, and a CAGR, a cumulative annual growth rate of 48% is expected to be seen every year on year. The number of pure play vendors also decreased because there was a lot of acquisition activity happening in the vendor scene. This means that the vendors are also recognizing that, yes, UEBA is going to be a new and emerging technology. There is a lot of opportunity. So let's start acquiring those who offer specialized UEBA solutions and make them part of our own organization. All right. This is something that Gartner brought to light in their UEBA report 2018. Campaign-based security awareness. This is what I was mentioning earlier. We are seeing that traditional classroom sessions, e-learnings, LMSs, these are not working so much. So we're looking at new and emerging areas like, for example, VR games or phishing simulations to change the culture of the organization and thereby protect the organization from cyber attack itself. All right. So like you see, in 2019, we expect that security managers will start focusing on their own employees, strengthening their own inbuilt identification, authentication, as well as authorization mechanisms, and also identifying ways to improve their security culture within the organization itself. All right. With this conclusion, guys, what we can expect for 2019, what do you think should be the focal area for a cybersecurity decision maker in cybersecurity? We are trying to break this into 3 predominant areas, one of which is context setting. The next one is pursuing and achieving compliance. And the third one is how do you act in the face of a cybersecurity breach? So what I mean by context setting is setting the stage ready, context establishment, preparing for that cyber attack which is expected anytime this year. How do we do this? First one, of course, is develop my cybersecurity talent pool. How I can do that is by acquiring certifications for my internal staff itself. Like I said, I have seen that employee 123, he's loyal to the company, he knows how the organization works, and he's very, very promising. It's just that he misses a certification. I will send him for certification training. This is what the typical approach would have to be. Establishing cyber defense infrastructure, of course, this would call for investment in anti-phishing, anti-malware, anti-ransomware, APT protection solutions. A whole suite of vendors are available today offering these solutions. And yes, you are familiar with the vendor landscape. On the compliance scene, organizations would have to pursue compliance with GDPR. Yes, this year, a lot of them spend time just understanding GDPR and how it applies to them. But we expect that in 2019, the focus would be on actually achieving compliance. Just for the record, we cannot go and say that I am certified against GDPR. There is no organization that has been legally recognized as being a GDPR certifying body. So we can't do that right now. All we can say is that, yes, we are in a state of compliance, but we cannot be certified against that. So we expect that organizations would exhibit this particular state of compliance next year. How they can do this is, of course, by seeking help from outside external consultancies. These organizations would come in, perform gap assessments, develop a proper, structured GDPR implementation roadmap, and always, changing the internal culture of the organization, improving the awareness levels of employees. That would also have to be pursued. How we can do this is by trainings. On the incident response front, breach protection, breach detection, as well as response. Prevention is always better than cure. So yes, I can look at mechanisms where I can detect malicious traffic that is flowing through my network. Like I mentioned, attackers are using cloud-based platforms like Google Docs or Dropbox to hide their malicious traffic as genuine traffic of the organization itself. Detecting this would be a challenge. But then at least focusing on the existing attacks, which, for example, involve using SSL traffic for key exchange in the case of a ransomware attack, or any other traffic which is potentially anomalous and is deviant from traditional UEBA user entities behavior as identified in a UEBA environment. We'll have to focus on those areas. Once you detect that you've been breached, the first question is how quickly we can detect this, of course. And the second question is how quickly do we respond to this and how well do we respond to this? So organizations have started investing in SOC solutions. Like I said, globally, about $17 million was the average that was being invested. SOC would have to be, it's a must-have today. It's not a good to have in today's context, especially if you're an organization based in the Middle East. Having managed security service providers who are third-party SOC is also a good option. I don't need to have my own full-fledged SOC. I can have a third-party SOC as well. Investing in a good SIM solution is also a very good option for managing, for detecting as well as managing a cybersecurity response incident. Just to let you know, guys, Ingram Micro, a quick introduction to ourselves. I introduced myself as Praveen Joseph earlier for those who joined late. I'm part of the cybersecurity team. Ingram Micro Cybersecurity, we are a separate division that was founded within Ingram Micro about 2 years ago. We have been offering value-added solutions around cybersecurity. So when I say solutions, this means we don't just distribute products, we distribute services around these products. And these services are not always vendor-specific. They are vendor-neutral as well. What I mean by this is we have teams, we have consultants who are experts in GDPR. They have the certifications, they have the qualifications and the experience. They are experts in CISSP trainings. They are experts in PCI DSS, ISO 27001, SAMA, you name it, we have it. All right, so these are vendor-neutral consultants that we have. They would work with you who are our trusted partners. They would work with you, go to your end customers, identify these pain points, the ones that I just described. We will try and identify where these areas exist, where these issues exist, and develop the solutions along with you for the end customer itself. All right. So when a customer tells us that I need to be compliant with GDPR, we would go to them with you, through you, our trusted partner, and tell them that, you know what, we have a team that can train you for GDPR. We have partnered with IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. We are an authorized partner of theirs. We can do the trainings for you. We can qualify your own staff. Once they are trained by us, they can actually sit for the exam with IAPP, and once they pass the exam, you have the staff with the certifications. Same for CISSP. We offer the CISSP trainings, and as I speak, one of these trainings is going on this week in our office here in Dubai. We offer these trainings on a continuous and ongoing basis. These are 5-day super intensive trainings for CISSP. Like I said, it is one of the most reputed certifications a professional can have in cybersecurity. On the cybersecurity defense infrastructure front, we distribute, you already know, might be knowing this, we distribute about 25 to 30 cybersecurity vendors. We have cyber defense solutions coming in from McAfee, Kaspersky, FireEye, Cofense for phishing, Trend Micro, Quest, you name it, we have the vendor with us. All right, so how we could traditionally approach this is through a consultative approach. When a customer has a pain point, we identify these pain points, we tell them these are the solutions, and then we present the vendors. The vendors, we present them with you. We partner with you and we present the best solution for the customer to address their specific problems. Similarly, for compliance, we have GDPR, ISO, or some specific cybersecurity or privacy consultants on our team. We are not vendor specific, we are all vendor neutral. We would go to the customer's office, do the gap assessment with them, do the audit for them, and then develop the compliance roadmap for them and provide it over to them. All of this would go through you, of course. And these are all white label services, so they can even carry your own logo on top of them. For the employee security awareness, we have a whole suite of security trainings. I know you can't really read it from here, but I'll show you quickly on one of the upcoming slides. We have trainings for end users, for security people, as well as for privacy people. For incident response on the breach protection front, Nextink, 810, as well as FireEye are the vendors of choice, but then this is not the exhaustive list. This is just an indicative list. For breach detection and response, we have SIM solutions from IBM QRadar, Microfocus. We have HP ArcSight right there, and then we have Alien Vault, one of the very, very well performing SIM solutions in the region. This is our cybersecurity portfolio. For those of you who might not be familiar, we are taking a holistic approach, which you must have understood from the way we discussed over this session. We are taking an approach to cybersecurity that touches upon people, processes, as well as technology. And in fact, we believe in this approach so much that we've aligned our entire service portfolio in line with it itself. So for processes is where we have our services. We do technical assessments, we do consulting, we do managed security services as well. A third-party SOC, we can do this for the customer. When I say technical assessment, what I mean is we can do vulnerability assessments, we can do penetration tests, web application scans, all of this we do. And we've been doing this for the last 2 years, in fact. And we do these remotely or on-site. So the customer tells us, you guys need to be in our office. We don't trust you to do it remotely. That's totally acceptable. We can come down to the customer's office and do it. And of course, we would come down as your team, as our partner's team, not as an Ingram micro team. All right. Even for consulting, whether it is consulting on GDPR, PCI DSS, ISO, or any of the security compliance standards or frameworks, we have the people, we have the team, and in fact, I am part of this team myself. We would go down to the customer's locations, do the gap assessment, like I said, do the audit if required. We would develop the compliance roadmap and give it to the customer, and we would handhold them till they are ready for the certification audit. We don't do the certification activity. We are not a certification body right now, but we partner with the certification bodies. We can also bring them to the table as well. For trainings, like I said, we have trainings targeting end users of technology. This is where I mentioned about gamified security awareness solutions. We offer this. We have trainings for cybersecurity team like CISSP, the biggest one that I was telling you, and the one that has 50,000 job vacancies out there in the market today. For privacy team, we have GDPR specific trainings. The DPO training that I told you about, we partnered with IAPP to offer these trainings. And on the vendors scene for technology, this is the entire list of vendors that we distribute. You can see that this is a very, very long list, and this list is growing. Primarily also due to the vendor incubation program. It's the brainchild of our team. New and emerging vendors, we have taken them and actually develop them in the market, and we are delivering a lot of value to our customers through these very, very niche solution providers, new and emerging vendors. All right. A quick look at the team. You might have met us through email IDs or through phone calls, but just so you can put a face to our names. Mr. Mark Casas, he's our director and the founder of the team. He heads the team as well, and he's been with the team. He's the one who founded the team, in fact. Dr. Ariana, she's a PhD in cybersecurity. She heads our services, and we have a whole suite of consultants as well as pre-sales executives who report into Ariana. On the business support and marketing front, we have Shanam, who's responsible for business support. You may have interacted with him over emails or phone calls. And we have Jessica, who is responsible for marketing. And she was responsible also for developing the emails about this webinar. You would have received them. They were triggered by Jessica. We also have specific product managers for our entire portfolio. This is the team that you see over here. We have Jad, Celestine, Khalil, Abhilash, Walid, Ibrahim, Fahd, as well as Vikram and Tracy. The team is very, very fast growing, like you can see, and it is a strong testament to the commitment that we have towards our vision of delivering cybersecurity and helping cybersecurity value and helping your customers to unlock their true cybersecurity potential. Thank you so much, guys. It was a great pleasure, like I said, speaking to you and interacting over the 2018 cybersecurity trends. If you have any questions, please, right now would be the time. Please chat into the chat window and we'll wait for your questions, comments, or feedback. Okay, we have one question. And the question is, how will Brexit affect GDPR? Okay, this is a very, very tricky question, if you ask me. There's no straight answer to it. We still need to see how Brexit is going to play out and whether the United Kingdom will be a part of the EU or not. If those who wanted the UK to leave, they have things done in their way, and the UK is out of the EU, then the UK would be considered to be a part of the rest of the world. So it would not be considered to be a part of the EU anymore. And the same conditions that apply for the rest of the world to deal with the EU in terms of data processing or personal data protection, it would apply to the UK as well. Now, what will be interesting is, according to GDPR, the European Union has a list of 13 countries that they say are trusted countries. Okay, so they are comfortable with transferring data to these trusted countries, even without any additional safeguards, simply because they know that these countries offer sufficient data protection regulations. Switzerland falls in this list. The USA, because of does not really fall into this list, but still, there is something called the privacy harbor, the safe harbor, the US safe harbor, through which transactions are still carried out. Australia, Canada, etc., they all fall under this list. So it will be interesting to see whether the UK would be considered to be as part of this list, whether it would be considered a safe country to transfer data to, or we would have to apply additional controls. My personal view is, yes, they would consider UK to be a safe country because of the historical relationships, of course, but we'll need to see this in light of GDPR. Thank you for that question. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for attending. I hope the session was useful. You're free to always email us and share your comments as well as feedback. The recording is available and we will share this as well. Thank you so much for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.